Hey, what's up? Dusk the Viking here, doing a tactical breakdown of the Wehrmacht infantry. It was requested in a comment on one of my videos, so here we go. First, a little bit of a recap on the old video, kind of explaining what Grenadier squads are good at because they have the COH3 rifles. So this is a story of what the COH3 rifle is good at, and that the Grenadiers are just a mainline unit that uses it. In other words, just a well-rounded or average unit. They would win in all three of these scenarios because in this situation we have a COH3, a long-range rifle, versus the M1 Garand and a Thompson machine gun. So medium-range rifles and one short-range gun. So we are just at a range that they are not effective at, and we are. Same thing here, COH3 now at medium range, but the sub-machine gun of the assault engineers just isn't really effective, very far past that sandbag. So here the Grenadiers still win. And then here, yet again, the COH3 and the Grenadiers win this one. Not so much because they outperform the submachine gun, but this is just quite simply because it is a support squad with only 320 health versus a full 6-man 480 health Gren squad. So with that in mind, let's move over to the next example section here. I've got all of the Wehrmacht infantry divided into 3 categories. Units that are good at frontlining. These are any units with long-range rifles, which are basically either G43 rifles or the long-range COH3. Now, I am missing one here. I just now realized the Fallschirm Pioneer. They should be over here in the front, good frontline unit, because they have the COH3 rifle, and the Fallschirm Pioneer actually have a decent amount of hit points. That's one of the other keys to being a decent frontline unit, is having a decent hit point pool. All right, over here we have squads that are suitable only for flanking, and this is where the Fallschirm Jaeger go. This is actually one of the questions. This is, what are the Fallschirm Jaeger good for? They seem really weak. They're actually excruciatingly powerful, but the thing is they're not a suitable frontline unit. They're more of a flanking unit because they use the FG42. I actually had to Google this rifle. I didn't recognize it, but the FG42 is apparently the most advanced rifle in World War II. It's kind of a precursor to modern assault rifles, but it's used by a paratrooper squad, and as you can imagine, that means it's kind of a lightweight rifle. So it doesn't really do a ton of damage, but it is a very accurate high rate of fire weapon. So this makes them much, much more suited to flanking, and of course breach, just because they're also good at urban combat, which is really handy. And down here, last but not least, we have units that are good at both. They can frontline or flank. Now, let me explain really quick why these units are flexible. It's because they often, or not often, they all have a sort of medium range loadout with a decent health pool. And now, if you see here, just to point out, Stoßtruppen, you see them both pens here. This is the Stoßtruppen that get upgraded to have SG44 rifles. That's why they're here. That is the medium range rifle, as opposed to the default, which is to have a bunch of G43s backed by one guy holding an LMG. Now, that LMG basically means that when these guys sit in cover somewhere, anybody that tries to push them gets really, really punished. These are really good defensive frontliners for that reason, but you definitely always want to have a position of cover or high ground, something like that. Now let's move on to some examples of how to use your flankers and what this all means. Now, in a perfect world, you get a perfect flank, you get your main line, unit up here, and your flankers get to sneak around, you get all your, your perfect flank off, but that's just not how things always play out. They tend to need to be a little bit quicker and messier. So I've got an early game situation set up here where we have one unit of rifles, and then we have a Grenadier squad and our flanking force of the Pioneers. Now, if these guys are microing properly, they're going to try and focus the support unit as they approach. So you want to make sure that they're nice and locked on to your frontline unit. And to do that, you simply just kind of want to push them and get in cover. And keep the Pioneers back, or you do want to maybe just move them out of sight. And get ready to push. When you're ready to push, tell your rifles to get up here, and then you move these guys in. As soon as I get back here, I press my W key to stop them, because when you're stopped, you're more accurate. This is now a pretty solid flanking maneuver. they're locked onto this squad. If they decide to change and start shooting this squad, just do as much damage as you can before you retreat. If they chase this squad and try and run them down, then the Grenadiers are going to punish them for doing that. But in this scenario, the Grenadiers here tank all the damage. And then you've got your Pyos, which have 3 MP40s, which clean this up quite handedly. Boom, there we go. The Pioneer squad ends up with 640 XP. And here's the interesting part. This squad only got 308 experience. That lets you know who was actually doing all the damage in that fight. It was actually the Pioneer squad, not your Grenadier squad. Your Grenadier squad was just there to act as an anchor and to punish the Rifles squad if they decided to chase the Pioneer squad. All right, let's move over to, this is more of an advanced tactic. Let's move over here. This is an example I wanted to show off about why specifically long-range rifles do make a better frontline. So we've got 2 Jaeger squads here versus 2 Assault Engineer squads. These guys are clocking in at 450 health, and that is 5 submachine guns per group. This is a lot of damage. As you just saw what 3 Pioneers can do, or 3 submachine guns, imagine what 10 can do. But the problem is the submachine gun isn't effective until you get about, where this crater is right here, right? So the difference is these guys are effective way out here, which means these 2 squads can focus fire one squad before either of these squads are in lethal range. At that point, we can ensure that one of them are pretty hobbled by the time they get into close quarters, and then one squad can sit off to the side, and the squad that's being focused by the submachine guns can simply kite away. And again, the long-range rifles just get to eat that submachine gun unit alive while they're chasing around another squad. All right, let's do another scenario over here, a tactic where we actually utilize like a machine gun and a sniper. Real quick, what a sniper does, this is definitely a support unit. It's just there to empower another squad, to help make sure that they're winning the fights, that the fights are one-sided. The sniper doesn't really win anything on its own. In fact, with only 80 health, this guy dies super easy. He's really squishy. But let's say we have this huge triple blob up here. Our sniper would, start taking shots and get them really angry. The Grenadier squads would be shooting, and then the sniper would fall back and actually just ends up being bait for this machine gun. All right, so we see the sniper. We're going to rush in. The sniper probably kites back a little bit, obviously. And now you have 3 suppressed units. And we'll assume the sniper's gone at this point. We'll say the sniper runs away. Doesn't matter, you got 3 pinned units now. Anyway, as you can see, super effective setup there. Huge infantry blob, just completely shut down by a single Gren, single machine gun, and single sniper. And this is like the secret sauce of Wehrmacht right here, is you create a situation where you can push into your opponent and force a response that will favor something that you have set up. That's why, a lot of Wehrmacht players will try and focus fuel and turtle into one part of the map very hard and try to get to a very powerful tank very early. And here's a little bonus tactic you can do if you want to get some use out of your Dragon's Teeth. You can do 3 Dragon's Teeth on either side of an AT gun. This will keep those pesky medium tanks from circling your AT gun quite so easily, as it's pretty easy. As it's pretty easy, there we go, to just spin your gun on spot here. Meanwhile, the tank will have to continue circling, and if you have landmines on one side of your Dragon's Teeth, they will inevitably hit those. All right, and last but not least, we're going to talk about these Fallschirmjäger. Because while they are a good flank unit, they're kind of an expensive flank unit. And they do have some unique things that other flankers don't have, mainly the ability to be dropped in anywhere on the map. So I've set us up a scenario here where we have the road being held by 2 AT guns and 2 machine guns. This is very hard to flank, very hard to push, and spread out enough that artillery isn't going to be super effective. And you can imagine there's probably infantry and whatever else. And then here's our little tank that we want to push up the way here. So if you had some Fallschirmjäger, what you do is you drop those bad boys in, preferably earlier in the game, so that your opponent has maybe lost track of this unit. So real quick, if you're not familiar with how the concealment works, if you're next to cover and holding still, you're concealed. As soon as you start moving, you will eventually become revealed. So you have to get into cover and get stationary again before that wears off. So we'll go back over to cover, stop moving, get our cover back, go to cover, stop there. Haha, you didn't see anything. Alright, so this is where Fallschirmjäger really excel as a flanking unit. What we're going to want to do is come in here and then take out this machine gun, which will open up this flank for our troops, and then also go ahead and start taking out these anti-tank guns. But, like, this is going to be a complicated thing. Fallschirmjäger, I'm going to say, are probably one of the hardest units in the game to utilize, because you have to time their attack with another push. So we're going to say that you're going to bring in some units here. We'll get these beat up units. And we wait for these guys to get in here before we push in. Remember, we get that bonus concealment attack. So we're going to want to open up. Throw our grenade. These guys do a lot of damage while they're moving. Make sure your weapons are free. This group is now free. And Fallschirmjäger do a lot of damage even while they're moving because their rifles are so accurate, making them really, really good at running down fleeing units. And again, just continuing to do lots of damage even while moving. Listen to those rifles, man. And that is ideally, in, best case scenario, how you want to use your Fallschirmjägers. If you can pull off a maneuver like that, a single unit of Fallschirmjägers can easily win a game for you. Now, of course, this is just a brief tactical overview. There's no way I could cover every single tactic available, and the game is still early on, so I'm sure there's plenty of tactics that haven't been discovered by anybody yet. But hopefully this is helpful, and this will get you started in the right direction and give you some things to think about with your own Wehrmacht forces.